Welcome back to Some Kind of Fun. We have Dante and Katie from Twin Cities United Performers with us. Do you want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah. Hi, Katie Drahos. I'm a musician in a handful of bands around town and an organizer.
Hi, I'm Dante Levy, also a musician and organizer around town, playing a handful of bands. You can't stick with just one.
No,
you know?
can't.
You don't want to play favorites, right?
No.
Exactly.
So I started following Twin Cities United Performers on Instagram, and I think it's a neat thing. Why don't you tell us what that organization is about and how you got started?
Yeah, totally. So we actually got started around like a year and some change ago. It's our organizing efforts started when the First Ave workers decided to unionize, and we kind of ran a campaign alongside of their campaign. So we were like the artist arm of support. So we very quickly amassed a bunch of different artists to sign a letter of support, and then organize around like different actions and making sure that we were showing our support for the First Ave workers. And then from there, we were all like meeting a lot. There was a ton of really talented musicians. And then also inherently, we always talk about how musicians are organizers just by the way of what we do. And so we decided to just keep it going. So it morphed into Twin Cities United Performers, where we have spent the last year really diving deep into what it means to be a musician in Minnesota and what the goals are to make us Minnesota the best place to be a musician in the world and the universe.
That's right.
So I grew up like here in Minnesota, and my general outlook on music is the best music in the world starts in Minnesota because we got Prince, Husker Du replacements, and then that's the '80s, and then then the second best music is music from the United States, and then the third best kind of music is I guess the rest of the world.
I can get on board with that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So I totally get that. So, but then I was reading the news recently, and there's this Minnesota Music Census found that we are one of the lowest paying music communities. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, it was very interesting. So that census was conducted by the city of Minneapolis earlier this spring. There's an Austin-based group that's been running music censuses across the country in various cities. And so when the results of the Minneapolis Music Census came out, we saw that, among other things, Minneapolis paid fewer dollars, just a lower amount of money per gig than other cities. And that was on average.
So did the report explain what the cause is, or do you have any idea of why we're so low paying here?
The report didn't really dig into the causes. Part of what the city was doing in their unveiling of the results was bringing music industry folks together to talk about why this could be and what solutions could be. Teacup has been talking about this for a while, even before the Minneapolis Music Census came out. I think that musicians have noted post-pandemic especially that gigs have just been paying less generally. And I don't even think this is a post-pandemic trend. You could talk to anyone who's playing music in the 90s and it would be obvious that ticket prices and payouts have been pretty consistent since then. So we've experienced, I think, wage stagnation on a greater level than most other industries.
Yeah. So so part of my day job is I work for the Minnesota Department of Labor and Industry in the Labor Standards Division. And so we try to figure out to make sure that employers are paying minimum wage, that they're paying overtime. The specific area I work on is earn sick and safe time. But what goes into a gig in terms of the effort and then the money that comes out?
Yes. So that's alongside of, so the city came out with their report. We also did our own surveys as well. Theirs was in 2 weeks, I think?
Yeah, 2 or 3 weeks.
They took 2 or 3 weeks. We have been conducting surveys for a longer period of time, trying to get a bigger data pool for specifically this reason. And what we've been hearing, it's not just from our own personal experience, which is a valid data point, but what we've been hearing across the board in general is specifically that question that you're asking of what does it take to go into a gig? And those are the questions that we broke down and asked, how much does it cost for you for your practice space? How many hours of unpaid labor are you performing when you just go to a gig? So for example, if I'm playing a show at a venue around town. My set time might be at like 8 o'clock, but my load in time is like 4:30.
Right.
So I need to get to the venue around like 4:30, set up, and then I am just chilling. Like I do my sound check, then I'm just chilling around. Then I play my set. So from 4:30 to 8, I'm there. So that should be paid time. And then if you want to get paid afterwards, you need to stay. And a lot of times shows aren't done until like midnight, 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock. So really, I'm like physically at the venue from 4:30 until like 2 in the morning. And I'm really only getting paid for that time that I'm on the stage. And that's like what the rate is going for. And depends on like, sometimes there's guarantees. Sometimes you're able to negotiate ahead of times. A lot of times it's ticket sales. A lot of times it's just out of your control in general. And then on top of that, a lot of times you have to pay for parking, depending on where you're playing. Our equipment just to perform in general costs money and time and effort. But just like the actual like getting to a gig, you're really like, sometimes you have to take work off early, like in one of those early load-in times. Like
Right.
if I'm working until 5 or 6, I got to be there at 4. Then that means I'm losing money on my work side of things as well.
Right.
So there's a lot of like unpaid time that people don't really recognize that are actually going into being a performer and playing the gig. And it's like an expectation that you are doing those things. Like I can't tell the venue, actually, no, I'm not sound checking, or no, I'm not going to do that and pay me this. And then also like a lot of times the comp is for drinks, but like a lot of people that I play in bands with don't even drink. So that's not really valuable to them. So it costs like $1. So like really, like it's really not the value for like, oh yeah, we're going to give you 2 drink tickets for the 5 million hours that you're hanging out here. It just doesn't really like comp as well.
I'm sort of new to this. So if you are playing at a venue that has food, will they provide food for you? Or is that...
It depends.
It depends.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some places will give you like a voucher for 50% off.
Okay.
Most places don't give you anything for food. So if you like, again, you get there at 4 o'clock, then you need to eat something. So
Right.
a lot of times if the venue has food, you're going to be paying into it. And a lot of times I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm spending more money just like buying my dinner and buying drinks and then leaving with like maybe like $10 after everything. So yeah, it's frustrating.
So wages is the number. Is that would you say the top thing that Teacup is organizing around?
I would say in our year of organizing, we spent a year doing a lot of, like Katie mentioned, surveys, talking to musicians about what people were feeling were the biggest issues in the local music industry. Poor pay or low wages was a number one, and a close second or tied for first was equitable treatment and respectful treatment by venues and bookers throughout the scene.
What is that? Paint a picture for me. What is that?
Yeah, I think there's a pretty big range when we're talking about what is equitable treatment. I think if you talk to folks in the music scene who are non-white, who are not men, or who are queer and BIPOC, there's a pretty consistent story of finding difficulty in getting into these spaces, feeling like they're maybe shut out of certain bookings, or they're having trouble getting into clickier scenes. And then once you are booked, there's sometimes just not a great standard of professionalism. There will be venues who might not tell you exactly how much you're going to make until the day of the show. They'll tell you about an ambiguous expense fee that they'll have to take off the top that you won't know about until after you play. Venues might decide to withhold payment altogether if they feel like it. The industry has quite a power dynamic imbalance from my perspective between performers and venue owners. And what we're hoping to do is to create some infrastructure that might help correct that.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, there's an event coming up on December 14th. Do you want to talk about that, please?
Yes. And on December 14th at Pillar Forum, we will be kicking off what we're calling the First Teacup campaign. And that is a 2-pronged approach to correcting some of the respect inequity, I guess we'll call it, in the music industry landscape. And I say that's 2-pronged because on one end, we want to educate artists in the local music scene about what their rights are as independent contractors. Actually, in the city of Minneapolis, we have some of the few independent contractor protections in the country. And something that I think we can do as Teacup is teach folks that you actually need a contract if you're going to be playing a show. The venue needs to tell you how much they're going to pay you or how are they going to calculate that, and that you need to be paid in a timely manner. And that's according to the city law. There's also a certain, how do I put it? There's a way that you can approach booking that will get the venues to respond to you a little better. You know, you can ask for certain things, or you can present your yourself, your band in a way, we call it the show advance, that's going to make it easier on everybody to book you. So this first prong I'm calling like artist education, basically. We're going to equip people with the tools they need to advocate for themselves in this landscape. The second approach is, or the second prong of this approach is venue outreach. Because we've talked to venue owners, we know that it's not that there's like a big pot of money being withheld to us by the greedy owners of these bars. I certainly don't think that's the case. The music industry is tough. Bars are struggling post-pandemic. There's just simply not a ton of money in the music industry ecosystem. Something that we would like to do is, instead of being antagonistic and say, no, you need to pay us more, we don't care if you go out of business. That's not, we know that not only do music venues need musicians, but musicians need music venues. So we want to partner instead with music venues who are in alignment about these things with us. They say, yeah, we do think that you should be treated equitably. We think it's a good idea when musicians are better educated about this industry, because that means a smoother show for us. Mm-hmm. So the second prong, venue outreach, we want to partner with venues who will pledge with us to treat folks with respect, honor contracts, and work with us to solve some of the bigger problems around the lack of money in the ecosystem.
Yeah, and I think really starting with transparency, because a lot of things that we're talking about are like pretty big ideas of like, okay, we really want to like transform the scene so that everyone's making more money and it's good for both the venue and also for the artists. But I think that starts with just transparency in general. So like Dante was saying, like being able to give folks an artist and doing it in a widespread manner. So it's not just like a random person here is reaching out to this venue with an advance. It's like if all of us at the same time start with this standard, venues will start also being more apt to like be like, okay, everybody keeps sending me this email with this advance thing. Like nobody wants to book this show unless I fill out this advance thing. Maybe I should start doing it. And it's going to be a really easy process for everyone. And it's information that like they give us sparingly, and some venues do a really great job of already doing that, which so it's not like this is every single venue in town isn't like on their P's and Q's when it comes to specifically like an advance. But there are a handful, and like more than a handful of venues that it's like sometimes you'll get one depending on who's booking it. Sometimes this is happening. And really we're very data driven at Teacup. Like that's our main thing. It's the narrative is one thing and the people's stories are another thing, but we want to be able to quantify that in hard data of like where are the actual gaps so that we can start making movement in the places that make most sense. Whether that looks like coming up with some sort of legislation or going to the city and seeing like where are some places that we can maybe like pump the brakes on for the venues so that they can start putting more of their money into the artist and really bolstering Minneapolis as a city that's good to be an artist. And that really starts with transparency on like how these shows are being run, because that's another big factor that we found when it comes to pay inequity and just respect in general, is that there are some venues that will tell one person this is our cap for all shows, and then another person will go play there and it's like, I got paid way more than that, or they told me that this was actually the cap and it was way lower than what you were told. So if we just all like get on the same page in writing about like, okay, what's the advance, how does this work, what are you taking off the top here, what like how much am I expected, we can all go into our performances with more information and a better understanding of like how we're getting paid. So it might not start with everybody getting as much money as they think, but at least we're going into it knowing and making an executive decision of like, is this good for my band? Like, is this worth my time? If I have to spend X amount of hours, do I want to do this for this amount of money? Or should we like pass this time and like maybe somebody else, it might be worth more of their time to be able to do something like that. So we're just trying to like start with like, let's level the playing field for everybody, including the venues. So everyone can feel good about what they're doing when they're going and performing in this town.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you both. This has been one of my favorite interviews that I've been able to do.
Yay!
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
This is great. This is great work. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This is great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Seriously. check out Teacup on Instagram. Come to the Pillar Forum on December 14th.
Yep.
If you're a musician and you play a gig around town, fill out the venue report card, post-forum survey. We really appreciate that data. And we're going to be publishing those results in early 2025, so keep an eye out for that.
Yep.